Hi, I'm Nicole Gomez, and I am a nervous system and business mentor for entrepreneurs. And this episode, it's going to blow your mind. You're going to really learn about what that missing piece, that big missing piece is for you to create a highly profitable business with so much ease and so much abundance. And so yeah, listen up because it's going to blow your mind.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today I'm joined by Nicole Gomez. Now, Nicole, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine, Nicole. And for those that are tuning in right now, Nicole is a powerhouse in the realm of nervous system mastery and business mentorship. Now, her journey from navigating high functioning anxiety and burnout to building a thriving, sustainable business is nothing short of remarkable. And as you know, on the Online Prosperity Show, we're always bringing you guests that have managed to create a business that's profitable and enjoyable without the stress and struggle that comes along with it. And as you will realize, she is passionate about also helping other entrepreneurs rewire their nervous systems. Yes, there is an actual relationship to your nervous system and money too that we're going to be exploring today. So obviously she will help you unlock new levels of leadership and income if you're able to align those two things. And all this is done with less stress and hustle. Now, trust me, if you've ever felt stuck, especially in the grind or in the hustle culture, kill or be killed, sell or be sold world that has been presented to us, and you've ever wondered there's a more aligned way to do business, I think you're in for a treat today, because I think Nicole's unique blend of compassion and science-backed methods will actually leave you eager to rethink everything you ever thought you knew about success. Now, Nicole, I could go on and talk about things that I know nothing about. Why don't I let you, the expert, do the talking? Tell us a little bit about your journey and what it is that you're doing these days.
Yes, of course. So, I think where we start is, before I talk about my journey, I wanted to talk about this because, you mentioned the nervous system and we talk about making money. Ultimately, we're here in our business to build something strong, a really strong foundation for a long lasting business that is wildly profitable. And where does the nervous system fit into all this? The nervous system really determines how you lead, how you think, how you feel, how you make decisions, how you move through your business. And it's all happening without, outside of your conscious awareness. And what do I mean by that is that everything is happening, the way that you're reacting to things, the way that you're showing up in your business and your marketing with your clients, it's all happening in the background, right? You're not even realizing the way that you're reacting. And because what is happening here is that it's happening in the subconscious. Right. So the way that I'm gonna give this explanation, and then I'm gonna go on to my journey, is that the way that you're reacting or you're behaving in your business, what's happening is there's, and I'm going to talk a little bit of science here because I'm very analytical, but any kind of sensory input, so anything that's happening in your business, how you're showing up, how you're selling, that's kind of the sensory input. Something's happening, you're going out to sell something. And what happens is that the amygdala, so the sensory input enters the amygdala, and that's a part of the emotional brain. So it enters the emotional brain first. And so what the amygdala does is it starts to assess, is this a threat? Is this a threat to my safety? And then what happens then, what transpires from then, if it goes into the Rolodex of your subconscious. So your subconscious essentially contains all of your beliefs, everything that you believe about yourself, everything that you believe about the world around you, everything you believe about money, about business, everything is stored in your subconscious. Okay. And all of that was imprinted in childhood. From the ages of 0 to 7 years old, your subconscious, everything you believe about yourself, the world around you, about money, about selling, all of that was imprinted in childhood. So I always say it's like a child in you is running your business right now. The child in you is controlling your relationships, the way that you live your life. And it sounds you know, surprising and crazy, and people are just kind of shocked by this, but this is exactly what's happening. Is that in those formative years of 0 to 7 years old, your subconscious, your nervous system was imprinted with all those experiences in childhood, and you brought that on into adulthood. So what's happening is, when you're going out to sell, or when you're showing up on social media, or in your part marketing, or whatever it is, the emotional part of the brain, the amygdala, is going to assess, go through all of those beliefs and everything that you feel, all those past experiences, and it's going to assess whether there's a threat here. And if it does assess that there's a threat, then it's going to communicate with your nervous system, and you're going to go into that fight or flight or freeze response. And that is, or fawn response, right? There's a lot of people pleasing that we see a lot in business. And that's where there's a fear around rejection, a fear around, you know, what other people will feel, think about us, or how they will perceive us or perceive our business. And that then impacts it. And again, it's all happening outside your conscious awareness. So all this is happening, and we haven't even entered into rational thought yet. This is all happening before you even are able to be conscious that it's happening. And so that's why the nervous system, the subconscious, is so important in business. It's because everything is happening, and science has found that 95% of your day is being controlled by your subconscious and your nervous system. 95% of your day, which goes back to why, you know, I was saying it's controlling the way that you run your business. And so why it's so crucial that we address the nervous system, because that is what we can then resolve those things. We can then from there rewire the brain, actually rewire those beliefs from that place, and then you show up differently. You make money effortlessly. You're unattached to the outcome, and you start to sell in a way with integrity and with ease. And that's what I'm all about. And this kind of ties into my own journey, is that why, you know, what brought me to this is, well, my own journey through entrepreneurship. So I entered the world of entrepreneurship around 10 years ago. You know, it kind of coincided together with me kind of waking up to my life. So I grew up very much, and then into adulthood, very much a perfectionist, very much a people pleaser. I was carrying around a lot of trauma, and I didn't realize that I was. And that's the case when I see with most, if not all, majority of people out there, is that we're carrying a lot from childhood that we're not even conscious of. And that's where it's really a mission of mine in my work to re-educate people on what trauma is, because a lot of us are afraid of the word trauma, you know, and most of us will believe that trauma is, you know, we perceive trauma as a big thing, right? You know, sexual abuse or physical abuse or war or whatever it is. And yes, a lot of those, of course, those things lead to trauma, but ultimately we've all experienced some form of trauma in our lifetime. It's just simply how our brain and our human experience, it's simply just part of our human experience. And so I was carrying a lot of trauma, and yeah, so I was this perfectionist. I was this kind of, you know, you mentioned the high functioning anxiety. I was very high functioning, and I moved from like push, you know, like very high achieving, like push and needing to always do, and you know, and I attached my productivity, I attached my success or achieving, I attached all of those things, money, to my sense of self-worth, and again, all unconsciously. I wasn't aware of that. So when I entered the world of entrepreneurship, it's kind of when I woke up to my life. I was very much disconnected from myself as a result of everything that I experienced in childhood and all of the rest of it. And I was running on autopilot. And I see this with almost everyone that comes working with me, or even everyone that I see in the entrepreneurship world, is that we move from autopilot. Again, it's like we're really in this place of disconnection, and we're trying to achieve, in my case, especially with high achievers, trying to move and find success and achieve, but all with the purpose. Ultimately, what's actually happening, it's to meet this deep emotional need that went unmet, and it's all with the purpose of trying to feel worthy, or all with the purpose of trying to receive some kind of approval, or trying to receive some love. And so we move from that place, always kind of seeking, looking for this thing. And that's why there's, you know, I see this, it's like we're forever going to be chasing something. You know, you set yourself a goal, and then that goal is never enough. You have to set yourself that next goal, and then next goal. And it's important to have a vision, it's important to have ambition and goals, yes, but when there's this deep sensation and felt sense of it's never enough, we're moving from this place that's really disconnected, and there's just no joy and there's no ease. And then something always gives. And this is where I see is just, then things come crashing down. They need to step away from their business. It's just there's no sustainability there. And that's what I'm all about, is the ease and sustainability. We're here to create something really meaningful, right, with our business. No one is, I don't believe that anyone has moved into the entrepreneurship world, to kind of continue to, just to prod along and to not experience a really extraordinary life. We're here to create something really meaningful and some kind of impact and legacy. And that's the people that I work with. And so when I moved into the entrepreneurship world, it kind of shined a brand new spotlight. I'd done quite a lot of healing, and that's what really brought me to this work. But it like shined a brand new spotlight on all those doubts and all those, all those remaining fears and old wounds. And it's like, I say this all the time, especially with people who come to me. It's like, yeah, it's like the boogeyman comes from underneath you, right? It's like it shines a spotlight on like needing to be perfect, and then oh, I'm not going to do this, or I need to film this video about 100 times, right? I see this a lot, like, but because it needs to be perfect. And so what that does is that we're missing out on all these beautiful opportunities to take action and take really inspired action that actually moves the needle in our business, rather than kind of overthinking everything, and rather than trying for things to be perfect. We're missing out on all these opportunities, and that's where we're missing out on the goal. We're missing out on making really good money and making money, and we're leaving money on the table. So really, it was my own journey through entrepreneurship and motherhood as well. I have 2 young kids as well. That I just those 2 experiences, I see it a lot, are just they shine a huge spotlight on everything that needs to be addressed and processed. And you don't need to be, being a perfectionist or people pleaser or an overthinker. Those are not part of who you are. Those, and this is a really important message I want to send today, is that those were only coping mechanisms. Again, they were only coping mechanisms, survival mechanisms, so that it gives you that false sense of safety, or that false sense of being good enough. Right. So, I always say, like, perfectionism is a strategy to never be rejected, and we're trying to be perfect because we have this deep fear of not being rejected. When we actually address what's underlying that fear of rejection, it will dissolve. And I see this with my own journey. I was kind of my first beta client, and with all of my clients, it dissolves. There's no recovering perfectionists or recovering people pleasers in my world. It's you are no longer, I'm no longer a perfectionist. I'm no longer a people pleaser, because when we actually address what you're trying to survive from, right? What you're trying to survive from, what you're trying to cope with, we address that, what's actually underlying, and we address the root cause and rewire the brain from there. It dissolves. So how it showed up in my journey is, I was making little to no money at the start of my journey, and I was doing all the things, right? Like, I was very good at doing, and most people I see out there, a lot of high achieving entrepreneurs, you're very good at doing, but I was still making little to no money, and it wasn't sustainable. And then when I really addressed those inner layers, and I worked through a lot of my proven system that works, again, at a deep nervous system level, everything that you're not aware of is happening right now, then things just shifted completely. My strategy stayed exactly the same, right? I invested in a lot of strategy. I invested in like over 15K in business programs. And so I knew all the strategy, and the strategy remained the same. And yet my sales skyrocketed and my income skyrocketed. And I started entering into those 10K, 20K month territory. And it was that deep felt identity work. And it was who I was showing up as, how I was selling, my relationship with money. And so when we address all of that, you make money, and with ease and integrity. And integrity is really important here, and it feels good. And ultimately it feels good. So that's a recap of my journey and what brought me to this work.
Absolutely. Now, Nicole, that's the whole episode right there, Thank you so much for going in depth, because what that really showed me is a passion that you have, and the confidence that you have now in the workings of what you're presenting today. But obviously, while you were talking, you kept introducing us to kids, especially the kids in your world. First of all, you introduced us to the kid that was you, then now the kids that you have, as a mom. Let's go back to the kid that was you, Nicole. What did you want to be when you grew up?
That's so interesting because, and I did a piece of content around this, is that I actually didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't have the space. I wasn't given the opportunity, the space to really explore that. Because again, I think I was in survival for, so to give you a bit of background, I experienced, and I didn't know this back then, and it took me a while to come to this realization and also heal it, is I experienced a lot of emotional abuse growing up, a lot of unmet emotional needs. And so I was very much in survival. And so the way that I moved through the world really was I needed to, I was schoolwork or the education system, it came second nature to me, and that was where the only place I got some kind of praise or some kind of sense of worthiness. And again, it's a false sense of worthiness, because I didn't really feel it at my core. So I didn't really have the space to explore. I was good at this. I was very good. That's why my background is in science, and I have a very analytical mind. And so I didn't really have the space to know what it was that I really wanted. And so I moved through the scientific route. I got a master's in science and moved through that space. And I eventually ended up in investment banking and finance and business in that way. But it wasn't aligned. It wasn't really part of who I was. And that's a big thing with this work, is that most people I encounter, they don't actually know who it is that they truly are. And that starts with childhood. So the answer is I didn't know. I didn't have the capacity to even explore what it was. And there's a lot of grief around that. There's a lot of sadness around that, which I've processed a lot of. But yeah, I didn't have the space to really explore what I wanted to do. It was really only until I started to really heal on a deep nervous system level that I started to connect really into who I truly am. And it's like a deep felt sense of who I am. It's not like a label, like I am this way or I am that way. It's like a knowing, deep felt sense that you're connected to who you are, stripped of all of those unconscious experiences and beliefs and all of that. And that's where that's where it moved me into this mission. Like you say, I love that you're able to see that passion, because it's just, I am so passionate about what I do, because this is like often the missing piece in what people are looking for to find that true freedom, and financial and emotional and all of it in their life. So yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to be, which is sad. It's really sad.
Absolutely. So obviously in life, kids usually have people around them that would obviously be somewhat of a yardstick or a reference point, or because representation matters. Would you have had people on your journey that you would have maybe looked up to, that you would have said, that person has maybe something I would want to aspire to become?
Mm. I did not. I did not. And I think that's the case for a lot of people, is that, and it's interesting. I saw this post on Instagram. I won't be able to like kind of regurgitate what it was exactly it said, but most of us, especially women, we're not modeled. We don't see it modeled that we can really have it all in some sense, really lean into someone who's like our wildness and our rawness and our feminine energy, but also be able to also find that balance with that masculine. I talk a lot about whether you're male or female in terms of gender, in terms of genitals. I always talk about in business the feminine and the masculine, and a balance between the two. Is that most of us, we run on the masculine, especially a lot of women as well. Like it's the masculine is like the analytical side. It's like the doing, right? It's the doing, it's the action taking. And then the feminine side, and that is leaning into the intuition and the ease and the flow. And I always talk about, most of us have run on the masculine, and that's not sustainable. We can't move, and that's the hustle, right? That's the striving. We need that balance. When we have that balance between the two, that's where we create that real freedom and that ease and sustainability. Is that to be able to, yes, we want that ease, we want that flow. We want to move from our intuition and from who we actually are, and also take action in our business, because we need both. Where was I going with this? I started with what was your original? Oh yes, it was never really modeled. It was really never really modeled to move from both of those places, and to move from to be able to create that real freedom and So I didn't have that back then, and I think I know that a lot of people who come to me and the most people that I see out there, it's never really modeled. So we're trying to find where my mission is to really redefine what true success really is, redefine what true freedom is, and redefine what wealth is. Where again, I was never modeled wealth, how that looked like in terms of financial freedom, yes. And with that freedom, you don't need to choose between the two. We've been taught that, you can either be rich or you can be sick, or you can be happy, and you can't be both. And that's what we see out there. It's not really, really modeled out there. But now there's more of a, I think there's more of a movement. There's more really based in my own mission in the entrepreneurship world, is that you don't need to be choosing between the two. And that's also where a lot of our beliefs around money lie. And I see this a lot with entrepreneurs, is there's this unconscious block in the way that they move or take action in their business, because almost there's this fear of success, because what's happening is how they're perceiving success is that you need to work so hard. You're not going to be able to be present with your kids. You're not going to be able to have a life, to be able to have space, the capacity to really to actually live. But actually, we don't need to be choosing between the two. And so it's, we can create that capacity. We can make money with ease, and you can make money and have the capacity to spend time with your friends and be there with your kid, be really, really present with your kids. So, I guess the short answer is no. And I think that for most people out there, we haven't been modeled what that is. And so my work is to redefine really what success, freedom, and wealth means to you, so that you can go and then create it from there.
Absolutely. It's been quite a journey for you, hasn't it been? So you did say your journey into entrepreneurship started 10 years ago. What were you doing beforehand?
So I mentioned it before, I was in finance. So I was in investment banking for some time, very much because I have a scientific background, an analytical background, so very much in weaving that in. But yes, I was in finance and in business, really in a place that didn't align with me. And of course I didn't know that, but I was still in that place of autopilot and just moving from like, this is what I need to succeed, this is what looks good to the outside world, right? A lot of that false sense of like worth that comes from how we think it perceives to other people, right? Rather than what we feel about it ourselves, and how other people perceive of your life, of your success. That's how we draw on our own success, our own sense of worthiness. So it didn't align. I mean, yes, I was very good at it, and there's a lot of money in it, but it's again, it goes back to, in that world, it's you either choose happiness and freedom, or you choose money. And most people will choose that money, and then it's just something has to give. And I at one point I had kind of almost like a, not a breakdown, but like a burnout, a complete burnout. And it just wasn't sustainable for me, because it wasn't really what I wanted from my, what was aligned to me and what I really wanted for the rest of my life. So it was when I came to that realization that soon after I quit, and then I moved into, I was like, this is life is short. I'm not, and I'm always someone who, if I want to make something happen, I will make it happen. And except that before I was moving from, I'll make it happen in order to feel worthy. And now it comes from, I'll make it happen because this is what I know is right for me. And this is what brings me real joy and aligns with me.
Absolutely. So obviously you would have left the corporate world, like you say, you quit and you started something on your own. Now, it's never easy making that transition and making that shift. What was it like for you, coming from a place that you, like you said, you were in a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze, now thinking you can go and run a business? What was that transition like for you?
It's so interesting, because when I did make the transition, and even until now, when people I talk to people about it, or they ask me about it, and they say it must have taken a lot of courage to do that, to leave like a six figure income, and a successful, I was a VP, I'd been promoted and all this stuff. And what I always say is that actually it would have been more courageous. Well, courageous is probably not the word, but to stay. because actually staying would have been the most frightful thing for me. It would have been like the most what I could feel, because I started to connect more to my body. Like my body was just rejecting it on all levels, and so actually it didn't take courage at all. It was the way I felt it and experienced it was there was no other option but to leave, because it was either I stay and I'd probably go into a deep depression, and I was deeply miserable. I was deeply miserable. I used food to soothe. I had an eating disorder. I had a binge eating disorder. All of that is gone now. Because I'd healed, and not with time, but because I've healed deeply what was going on. But yeah, I had very poor body image. I was just miserable. So for me, it was like, yeah, staying like literally felt like a rejection from my whole body. So that transition was the most freeing experience of my life. And I think that's it was that moment where I started to reclaim myself and reclaim my life and what I wanted for, and wanted for my life. So yeah.
Absolutely, and congratulations for choosing you, because so many people would have just gone on thinking maybe it's a little bit of stress and maybe it's just how it is because everybody else around them is just going through the same. Now, we live in a world, Nicole, as you would understand, that is obsessed with managing stress. And at least you come in and you challenge the norm. Can you maybe share a little bit about your perspective on this and why you think it's actually time to rethink stress management, because everybody else is just medicating, drinking, or whatever it is that just numbs the pain?
Yes. Oh, I'm so pleased you asked that question, because managing stress, what's happening is, whether people are numbing it or avoiding it, yes, like you said, using food or alcohol or work, right? Like there's other numbing mechanisms, or like perfectionism is a numbing mechanism, or people pleasing is a numbing mechanism. And also there's other ways that they're managing stress, in quotes, and what they're doing is they're doing a bit of yoga, or meditation has become something that people want to get into more, or they're using all of these practices. And these practices, yes, they're beautiful practices, and in fact I'm an advanced yoga, really trauma informed yoga practitioner, and breathwork teacher, and all of that. But in isolation, what you're doing is what's happening here is people are literally just managing it, and they are temporarily, right? You might get that temporary relief, right? What happens when you do some breath work, or when you do maybe a yoga class or whatever it is, or some meditation, is that you're activating the rest and restore response of the parasympathetic nervous system. So your body comes back into regulation, right? Temporarily. And so you're just going to have to keep managing that. And so people are having to keep managing using, like, this is the word that's out there. Like, I have tools that help me manage it. I have tools that help to manage my anxiety. And, again, anxiety is like, when you feel anxious, we're taught in society that when we feel anxious, take some deep breaths. What's happening is you're just managing it. But what anxiety is, and what all of these things are, it's a sense of stored alarm in the brain. There's something, when you feel anxious, rationally, there's no threat to your physical safety, right? When someone feels anxious, there's no actual threat. There's no, like, a tiger is not going to come and eat you, right? You don't have, yeah. But what's happening is there's a sense of stored alarm in the brain and in the nervous system. What I was speaking to at the very start, when you have that sensory input, something happens, someone feels anxious, because what's happening is your amygdala is assessing with your subconscious and all those past experiences, this is a threat, this is a threat. And so it sends those alarm bells into your nervous system, and that's where you feel anxious, or you procrastinate. Procrastination is a really big one in business. That is a stress response. It is a nervous system stress response. It's a part of the freeze response. And again, it's just a sense of alarm. Like your brain and your nervous system are perceiving that there's a threat to your safety. And because we were built for survival as humans, and it's beautiful. We were built as survivals and to survive, and it's beautiful because it served us at some point. But that anxiety is no longer serving you right now. The procrastination is no longer serving you right now. That sense of stored alarm is no longer serving you. And so you can guide, and what I do deeply in the work that I do, or part of the work that I do, is what we need to do is we guide the brain and the nervous system and the body back to safety. Because right now, those alarm bells keep getting set off again and again, right? Every time you feel anxious. And so by trying to manage it using breath, you're going to be, like I said, it's not a long-term solution. I experienced a lot of anxiety. I was very high functioning, like we talk about the high functioning anxiety. I no longer experience anxiety. People are shocked when I say that. And my clients, when I work with them over a period of time, they no longer experience anxiety, because anxiety is a sense of stored alarm. When you bring yourself back to safety using the work that I do, working with the nervous system, the subconscious in a deep way, that those alarm bells don't need to go off, because your brain and your nervous system know that you are safe, know that you are safe. So yes, the managing stress is that you're just going to keep managing stress on a daily basis. But what's happening, it's chronic, right? It's like it's happening all the time. What's happening is that every time those alarm bells set off, all of those resources from your gut, from your elimination system, your immune system, they're all mobilized to get you away from the danger, or to fight the danger, like if a tiger is running at you or whatever it is. And that's why people experience a lot of gut issues. Or we talk about the link between stress and the physical body. This is what's happening, and it's trauma. At the end of the day, it is trauma. But people talk about managing stress, what's happening is they have trauma sitting in the nervous system. When you address and resolve the trauma, and that trauma, it really is represented, and it comes up as that alarm. When you address the underlying root cause and that trauma, that the alarm bells will no longer go off, because you will know that you are safe. So yeah, we don't need to be managing it all the time. And by managing it, that is one of the hugest blocks that's coming up in business, is that it's taking up too much space, right? And when you create that space, when you remove those alarms and you create that space, you are going to take those really intentional actions in your business that will actually move the needle in your business, and make you more money than you can probably imagine. So yeah, I don't know if any of that resonates with you, but managing stress is just, every time I'm like, oh, I cringe, and I'm like, my body is like, we have to stop talking about stress management. We need to talk about stress resolution of these alarm bells, because completion means it's no longer going to come up, and it's no longer going to be set off.
Absolutely. I quite like what you're saying, because back in the time, in the caveman days, if you were just spitted out by the clan or the tribe, then that meant you had no protection, no food, nothing. But these days, in the area that I live in, every 1 kilometer to the left or to the right is a shop or some space or place where you can get food. So all of those things have been solved for, but so many people are still finding things to suffer about. But, somebody will be watching this, Nicole, and they're probably rolling their eyes, and they could actually see the breakfast they had in the morning and thinking, but I've got kids, I've got a mortgage, I've got bills, you don't know what my life is like, and things of that nature. How you obviously managing it yourself as a mother? You did introduce your kids, so I'm supposing you're also having to deal with that, and also the passion that you have in helping others with their own personal lives. Any sort of tips that you might give to entrepreneurs that are maybe juggling multiple roles?
Yeah. And like you said, I speak from a mother. I have two young kids. They're 6 and 4. So they're very young, and something that I am very intentional, very passionate about, is being really present as a mother, really, really being present. I don't believe in the juggle, right? And in the juggle, you're giving your children half the attention, and you're trying to juggle that with your business. And, I am proof that you can have a lot of things on your plate. There's a lot of roles as a woman, as a mother, as a business owner, I'm married as well, as a wife. We can have all these roles, but what's happening is that when people are like, I've got just so much, is that they're at full capacity. They're at complete full capacity. They've reached the threshold of their nervous system, and it's often not how much we need to do that consumes that capacity. It's all the stuff I talked about, all those alarm bells that are being set off constantly, everything that sits in your nervous system. Again, it's from childhood. All those past experiences. Time does not heal anything. We need to actually, if you want to take responsibility for a life that you actually want, a really extraordinary life with full financial and emotional freedom and joy and ease and all of the rest of it, we need to free up that capacity. Right now, it's being taken up by a lot. And then you'll notice that when you actually free up the capacity, you'll be able to hold all those different areas of your life. From a personal point of view as well, there's been quite a lot of, I guess, additional trauma in my family. My father was just diagnosed with cancer not long ago, and I noticed this, and I just allowed myself to process it. And I was holding all of these different areas of my life, but I had the capacity to do that. So I didn't go into overwhelm. Again, overwhelm, it means that you're at full capacity. Those alarm bells are being set off constantly. There's so much sitting in your nervous system. When you free up that capacity, you have the ability to hold all these areas, and it feels good, and there's that ease. And so it's not really about how much you have on, it's about what your capacity is to take that on. And that comes back to business, where I see people are at full capacity to even just sustain the business they already have, much less trying to create more or trying to scale their business or move into different new projects. There's just no capacity, and so that's where we move into overwhelm, and there's just too much, so we can't even move into really growing a highly profitable business, because there's not enough capacity. If that resonates and makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. From what I'm hearing from you, you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands full. And
Yeah.
so many people are trying to do all of these things all at the same time. And obviously it's actually stifling their growth. I don't know if it's the same with you guys there in the UK, but if you fly a low budget airline here, Nicole, in Australia, the more luggage you bring into the cabin, the more you actually have to pay. Sometimes you actually have to pay for a
Great
kilogram,
analogy. I love that.
a kilogram more for more than the seat that you have next to you, just because of how it's all set up. So if you are carrying things along with you, it becomes very expensive, doesn't it?
That's right. I love that. I love that analogy. And what I wanted to also say, something you said before, when you said, when you say we have, yes, we're built for survival because as cavemen, they needed that, right? But right now we have the food, we have most of us, thankfully and gratefully, we have the roof over our head. But, because you said something like almost like, then we tend to think it's my fault. And here is the message I want to send. It's not your fault. What's happening, it's happening at a biological level. It's simply how we were built, our anatomy, how our brains were built in why we consumed a lot of that. That was imprinted in childhood because the most our highest brain center, right, the most modern part of our brain is not fully formed in that time. And so it's simply the way that our brains develop in childhood. It's simply how we internalize certain experiences, not without the ability to rationalize things. A child, it finds it, especially if you're a parent, you'll relate to this. A child will be unable to really rationalize themselves through a situation. If they're being yelled at by their parent, they're not going to think to them, rationalize and think, my parent has their own stress and is unable to regulate their own emotion, and that's why they're yelling at me. What they'll do is they'll internalize that. They're unable to do that. So they'll internalize that, and that goes into that Rolodex of the subconscious beliefs. It says, I am not enough. There's something wrong with me. I can't be who I am. If I am who I am, I get yelled at. So all of that is formed in childhood, and it's simply a part of our anatomy, and also generational ways of parenting and the ways that we weren't taught to regulate our emotion, and our parents didn't have that ability to know how to regulate their own emotion. But yeah, it was important to talk to that. It's not our fault. It's simply our biology, our anatomy, but it is our responsibility to, we're responsible for how we want to lead, the rest of our lives. So we have this responsibility to do this work so that we can create whatever it is we want to create in business and life and all the rest of it.
Absolutely. So, Nicole, are you saying or alluding that there's a whole bunch of fully grown babies that are just walking around in this world?
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And we are. Every time we react, every time you feel rejected by a client saying they're not going to work with you, it's that child in you that felt rejected, or that child in you that doesn't feel enough. That's absolutely it. And it was a client who said to me, Nicole, I feel more mature. And I said, and she said, the way I'm reacting, I'm not getting so angry, or, like, because anger is an important emotion, but a lot of the anger that we experience is a trauma response or a stress response. She said, I feel more mature. I feel like I'm walking through the world now, actually, as an adult, able to rationalize that it's not the child in me that's being triggered all the time. So yes, absolutely.
Um,
It's a bunch of kids moving around everywhere.
so tell me something. I mean, you've introduced us to all these Nicoles, and obviously, there's so many layers to this. But who are you becoming?
Who am I becoming? Um, for me, I always talk about that this work isn't about becoming anything. It's really about unbecoming who you never really were before, so you can really be who you were meant to be in the first place. So who I'm becoming is really me. And like, and I always talk about this, is that you will not, through this work, you won't recognize yourself. When I think about the version of me, a few years ago, or 10, 5 or 10 years ago, or even 2 years ago, um, that version of me wouldn't have believed that I was the person that I stand, and the way I move through my business, and the way I move through the world. And I posted about this yesterday. Every single one of my clients will tell you that they are shocked. They cannot believe the way that how they are showing up, the way that who they are, and how they react to the world, and how they move, and how they're moving through their business or through their work or whatever it is. They always say, like, it's like, Nicole, I posted about this yesterday, where one of my clients, I've only just been working with her for a month, and she said to me, Nicole, in our first call, you said to me, I'm not going to recognize myself in a good way, right? In a good way. I'm not going to recognize myself. And she goes, I didn't really believe you back then, but now I can actually feel it. Is that that's usually the feedback from clients is, I'm shocked, and it's the version of me even a year ago or a few months ago would not even believe you about the person that's standing in front of you today. So who I'm becoming is more me, and I'm here to create huge impact and huge legacy. And a lot of that is breaking that generational bullshit and generational trauma and generational cycles, and really helping people lean into wealth and their version of wealth. And so, because we want to live for a living, we're here to live for a living. And that's what ultimately I do with my work, and help you make money and actually live.
I like that. Now, I mean, obviously, this is a whole new concept for a lot of people, and nobody would have actually maybe matched the nervous system with, business and everything else. They just leave that to the doctors, and they never thought they would come across the nervous system in the boardroom. Now, for those entrepreneurs who are sort of new to this idea of the nervous system and its actual regulation and how it impacts everything that we can see, feel, or touch, where can they start?
So, well, first of all, you can connect with me. I give a lot of value through my content as well, so you're going to learn a lot from that. I'm actually leading. I don't know when you're airing this show, but I'm actually, in a couple of weeks, I'm leading a 3-day event. It's called Inevitable. So really to uncover the identity, the strategies that makes that unparalleled freedom, those consistent high income months, the ease really inevitable. So that is going to be, especially if you're curious and you want to learn more, because this is the key piece that brings that abundance and brings that wealth. Then just reach out to me, and I can send you the details for that. But where can they start? Ultimately, yeah, I would say just come to the event, because I was going to share something I'm going to share at the event. I would say come to the event. And if this is aired after the event, then I'm always giving away. Again, I have the capacity now to give lots of value, and from a place of joy, because I want people to be educated and really learn deeply about this work that is going to really transform their lives. So reach out to me, and then I can send you lots of just free resources. I have a community group called the Embodied Entrepreneur Community Group. It's a free group, lots of resources. My event is actually going to happen in there, so I regularly run events. So I think it's probably the best way to start. Just come on, binge on my content, have a look, and you'll learn a lot from there. And if you want to join the group or the event, then just reach out.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for giving us that opportunity. I will definitely put those links in the show notes so that people can actually get started. Now, just busting some myths here. I mean, you've worked in the mind, body, and trauma sort of space, and you've noticed a few behavior patterns of people for over a decade now. You must have a bag of, maybe stories or things that people have come to you with saying, it would never work. It's never like that. All I just have to do is bite the bottom lip and just swallow a bag of cement and my customers will come. What's one myth that you'd like to dispel about this type of work that you're doing and really prove to people that, hey, it's not what you know. It's just basically how you then apply the things that you know or things of that nature.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest, well, it's what a lot of people will go towards a strategy, and strategy is really important. And but what I see a lot of is that people have the strategy, but then it comes to how we're actually implementing it and executing it. And I collaborate with a lot of business coaches and people who and marketing coaches and experts that they teach all the strategy and they see that with their clients. And there's more awareness now in the entrepreneurial world where I don't know if you've heard of this kind of rule, like the 80-20 rule, is that we need to do this deep inner work around our relationship with money, around the way that we're showing up and all of this deep nervous system work. People talk about mindset, like the 80, they say that 80 is mindset, but again, it goes back to mindset. We cannot think our way through these things that are happening outside of our conscious awareness. You can't think or intellectualize your way to changing these emotional responses, changing if you're procrastinating, you're not going to be able to talk your way out of procrastinating. You're not going to be able to try and find those tools to kind of manage this procrastination. We need to work deeper. And so, it really comes to how you're executing it, how you're implementing it. And that's where I bridge that gap. We do that really deep work. And then with my clients, I help you really take that intentional action, but again, in a way that feels good, that creates sustainability in your business and creates that ease in your business. So I guess maybe the myth is that strategy is going to give us everything. But yes, without strategy, you don't have a business. But what's happening is people have all the strategy and they're looking for that missing piece, that secret strategy, all of that. But really the missing piece is that we need that 80% of it is who you're being. It's the identity piece. It's the deep inner work. And that's what's going to help you really, really thrive in your business.
Absolutely. I've noticed there's a huge difference from the younger Nicole that you presented to us and the now matured Nicole that is in front of us right now. Now, if you would maybe reflect on your earlier days, which obviously you have painted a vivid picture around, you were struggling with anxiety, perfectionism, and borderline burnout. What sort of advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now about life and how everything else, has unfolded for you?
Hmm. What advice would I give my younger self? Now, the way also the way I coach this or I teach this with clients is really not about giving advice to my younger self, but how we actually start to resolve and rewire our brain, is to validate my younger self, right? Validate everything that you experienced, because a lot of what society wants to do is to invalidate it. Society wants to tell you, oh no, but my problems are not that big, or actually I had a really happy childhood, and maybe that was the case, yes, but that doesn't, working on this deep work, that doesn't take away from that. And so it's really about validating it, because yes, again, you have to be grateful. That's another way that our society is telling us to invalidate everything that's going on in the body right now, which again, it's like that younger you that's being reactive and everything like that. So rather than advice, what I would say here that's most helpful, especially to everyone listening, is validate. Is for something that I never had growing up, is for someone to validate my felt experience. So validate the fact that I'm angry, or that I was angry, or that I was sad, or I didn't have the space to really process any emotions, to express them. I didn't have they were kind of shut down, which is what I see with almost every other person out there, a client, is that a lot of our emotions were shut down. We weren't taught how to really how to feel, and we were shamed for a lot of it. And there's a lot of shame because shame and trauma kind of go hand in hand. So rather than advice, I would say I just validate everything, and that's what's helped me get to where I am, and what helps my clients get to where they are, is validate that younger you, validate all of your experiences, because they were real. They were real for you. They were real for you, and and it's that validation that will take you far in your business.
Absolutely. Now, Nicole, obviously, you and I both have kids. I've got two girls, and one of them is 9, and the little one is 5. And it's almost Halloween. And I asked her, "What do you want to be?" And she wants to be a witch. And obviously, for Halloween, that's fine. But I asked her in life, "What do you want to be?" And she actually said she wants to be a witch. Now, maybe you can tell me how I can deal with that, in terms of validating, a younger child, because when it becomes as real as that, yes, obviously there is an element of, okay, I can show you a little bit of where the direction should be. How would you parent there?
That's a good question. Being a child is about play and fun. And I would say, great, you want to be a witch? That's great. And again, it's, a lot of parenting. And what I see is that we're trying to project our own, our own wants or our own desires onto our children. And that's where I see there's a breakdown, because we just allow them to just literally be them and uniquely them. And when you allow that space for them to actually be them, and in the craziest, weirdest, like I always tell my daughters, like, embrace your weird, like, mommy's weird, and we just need to be weird, and we all have weirdness inside of us, and that's what makes us free. It's if we literally embrace our uniqueness and we don't bring in our own stuff, right? And that's where the importance, especially as a parent, like how this work, it impacts, yes, your business, how you make money, impacts all aspects of how you show up in your life and your parenting. When you do your own work, you're not going to be projecting what you want, because there's somewhere in there you may be telling yourself, or there's a story you're telling yourself about this, like, oh no, she's not going to be ambitious, or she's not going to, do all these things, right? Like, I don't know if I can see you laughing, but it's, yeah, we project our own stuff. But if we allow them to be uniquely themselves and create that space for that, then they're going to go far in life. But it's those of us, and most of us, that weren't given the space to be safe, to be who we were, and that is what created a lot of blocks for us in our lives, and the inability to really create what it is that we want. So just allowing her to, yeah, you want to be a witch? Fantastic, I'll be a witch with you.
There goes my weekends then, Nicole. I'll be a wizard somewhere, casting spells and
I love that.
fantastic. Well, Nicole, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. And I mean, your life story and your experience and everything else that you're bringing to the table is not only unique, but it's really life changing. I mean, you've given us all a new lens through which we can actually view entrepreneurship. So many people are maybe trying to fit in a square, plug in a round hole, not knowing that it just really stems from them looking within instead of looking externally for things of that nature. Would there be any last things that you wanted to add on to this, or what would you really want somebody to just take away from this particular episode based on, just your experience in presenting new information to people?
What I want them to take away is, yeah, this work is the missing piece. I think I mentioned this a few times. It's really the missing piece, and you don't need to be sacrificing any parts of your life for what you want for your life in order to create success or financial, or I'm not going to say success, but financial freedom. You don't need to be choosing between the two. You can actually create a business and a life that is so expansive and so easeful and freeing, and you don't need to be choosing between the two. So I think if I were to leave it with anything, then it would be that. But yeah, thank you for having me on, Prosper. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Fantastic. Well, I thank you for bringing in this new concept, and definitely something well worth thinking about. And for those that are watching right now, if you're ready to break free from the hustle and find a more aligned, sustainable way to success, I viscerally encourage you to reach out to Nicole. I'll be putting in all those links in the show notes below, and also join her events that she has mentioned, because the wisdom that Nicole has brought to the table is some of these things were quite new to me as well. So you should see the amount of notes that I took about all this information. So be sure to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show so you don't miss out on exciting information and conversations like this. And if you know an entrepreneur who's going through a hard time, or somebody who's just really not able to crack the whole business journey of whatever they're doing, just obviously share this video with them so that they can get a few nuggets and maybe learn a thing or two about how they can actually align their own nervous system so that they too can do and have a business that's profitable and enjoyable. Until next time, I can't wait to see what you're going to do with this information. Bye for now.